Hello there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of An Ecologist Plays, the channel where we are learning more about nature by playing games. And we are back in Ark Survival Evolved, and as you may remember from last time, I tamed my first Argentavis and was promptly, as Suddenly Boop called it, hit by the RG curse, with the whole slew of things going wrong. And one of the things that happened is that our Argentavis, by the time we got back to the base, was MIA, was completely missing. I then set out to go and look for it, went everywhere, went back in the recording to eventually see that it had been with us pretty much all the way. And then as I flew around to the back there and I came back, this flame crest, the Argentavis over here, was just kind of casually flying back home below us here. So yeah, she made it back home without my intervention at all. Now, we have a trap down there, and that is today's main objective, is to get some dinosaurs. And the first one we are going to get is right over here, the Stegosaurus, and we'll be talking about it in a moment. But first of all, let's just quickly park Flame Crest over here. Actually, let's use Flame Crest to quickly pick up the Dilophosaurus and kill it. Now, whether Argentavis would actually have been able to pick up a dinosaur like that is debatable. Let's put it that way. It most likely would not have been able to do so. Remember, this bird was already like 72 kilograms in weight and already at the limit of being able to fly. So picking up something else and then flying off with it, highly, highly unlikely. But we are just going to hit the Stegosaurus, and hopefully it's not too quick. No, it's not too quick. We need it to actually come with us this way, and then up into the trap. Then I need to get out. There we go. Ah, the Stegosaurus is stuck. And this one will give us the opportunity to tame it without any problems. So I'll be back with you in a moment. Now, as I'm waiting for our Stegosaurus to be tamed, of course, we can pick up smaller dinosaurs like this Compy over here, the Compsognathus, and Argentavis probably would have been able to pick up something small like that. However, picking up something big like a Dilophosaurus, probably not possible. Now, there is, of course, another dinosaur over here that would really be wonderful to have. I think I'm just going to try to knock it out as well while we are here. And let's just hope we are not attacked by anything else. Okay, hopefully I can actually hit it. There we go. Hopefully we're not attacked by anything else while we are busy here. There we go. Knocked out. I don't have any other Mejo berries. We're just going to give it some other berries. And this dinosaur, of course, being Iguanodon. Really one of my favorites as well in the game and in reality. Actually, you know what? Most dinosaurs are my favorite. So I think let's just put that out there, that I love pretty much all dinosaurs, and I have always loved pretty much all dinosaurs. But Iguanodon over here has a very interesting history, and we may need to get into that next time. For now, however, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Stegosaurus, one of probably the most famous dinosaurs ever. Now, what Argentavis and so might have done is, if they caught something smaller, something that, you know, wasn't a Dilophosaurus, they might have actually picked it up and dropped it down onto the ground. And with the force of dropping it down onto the ground, it probably could have killed them. Oh my word, there are so many Therizinosaurus here. It's level 52, that's not a bad one. There's also one stuck in the rocks here. A level 28. Interesting. I may need to come and get more Therizinosaurus. More Theris. But anyway, as I was saying, the Argentavis dropping creatures down to below, that it would have worked with creatures that were small, like in this game at least, the Compy over here, where it was small and would have been able to be dropped down onto the ground. Now, of course, in the game there is no fall damage for creatures that's not being ridden by anyone at that point in time. But that is possibly what the Argentavis could have done. And it's supported by the idea that they were possibly and probably found in very rocky areas, because of it being very difficult for a massive creature, a massive and heavy bird like this, to actually get airborne. And so it's quite possible that they lived in mountainous areas and were then able to just take off by landing on ledges. Let's say, for example, it could land over here. And then when it needed to get airborne again, it would just drop off and start flying quite easily. No need to push off the ground. Because in theory, what would have happened is if they, for example, were on the ground like this, and you may see it if we actually try to get airborne, is that their wings wouldn't be able to flap all the way. Okay, so they kind of launched themselves up in the game here. Anyway, they probably wouldn't have been able to do that. Instead, they would have had to flap their wings and flap it through the ground just to get airborne, which of course they couldn't do. So it's possible that they would have landed up on ledges and then just taken off that way. But the other alternative way of actually getting into the air is if they were on the ground like this, and the wind was blowing towards them, so from that side, blowing past them, and blowing strong enough, and that probably would happen if they were in more open areas. There's very often strong winds blowing across the open plains, especially in the middle of the day. If that were the case, they could simply take off by extending their wings, and as they extend it, position it like that, and the wind would blow into it and actually force it upwards. And that is probably how they would have actually gotten airborne if they were on the ground in an open area. Okay, now we of course need to get our Stegosaurus over here out. I will talk about the accuracy or lack of accuracy with this species in a bit, once we are home safely. Right, now we have arrived home safely, but this Therizinosaurus is a little bit too close for comfort. So, we're just going to very quickly, oh my word, very, very, very quickly, remove it from existence. Right. I did not want it wandering over and killing Toro over here, or Skeletina, or one of the other ones that we have in the general area. So, Stegosaurus, a very, very characteristic dinosaur. Characterized by, well, a few things actually. First of all, it's got obviously the plates on the back here. It's got the spikes on the tail. It's got the long, thin mouth over here. And it's got its head raised above there. It's got shorter front legs and hind legs. Really a very, very interesting dinosaur. But unfortunately in the game here, not very accurate. And I say that because if you look up here, you'll see it's got a big row of plates and a small row of plates. And then on the same on the other side. So it technically in this game has 4 rows of plates. Never has there been the theory amongst paleontologists that it has 4 rows of plates. In some cases, there is the theory that it only had 1 row of plates. Generally accepted that it's more likely 2, but whether the plates are paired, as it is here, with one on the left-hand side being associated with one on the right-hand side, that one is still up for debate, whether it was alternating. So paired or alternating plates, that's the question. But it's generally certain that, yes, it is in fact 2 rows of plates, not 4. Additionally, the spikes at the tail here, called the Thagomizer, there were 4 spikes on the tail, not 6 as is shown here. Yes, it was relatively high up on the tail there, so that's good, and it's right at the tip. But there would have been the 4 at the tip there, not the 2 closer to the base of the tail here. So there would have been 4 spikes. They were quite big, about the same size as the biggest plates on the back here. And yes, the plates of the Stegosaurus started out small, got larger, and then smaller towards the tip here. But there may have been a little bit more variation in the size here, not this gradual small to big to small again. Now, the Thagomizer here at the tip also would have been pointed more sideways, because the main use of this was in defense. As you can see here, if it feels threatened, you can actually swipe with the tail, using it as a defense, and that is most likely what Stegosaurus would have used the Thagomizer for. So the initial thought was that maybe the Thagomizer was some kind of display mechanism. Maybe the Thagomizer was a way of differentiating sexes, but it turns out it's most likely a good weapon, because let's be honest, spiky tail tips is quite good at whacking stuff if you can actually hit something big. Okay, apparently you can't hit dodos with it. So yeah, the Thagomizer. Now, the Thagomizer, the term that we use, actually comes from a comic by Larson, I think it was, who basically had a caveman school where they were talking about the Thagomizer, or the tip of the Stegosaurus being called the Thagomizer after Thug, which was Metis demise, by the spikes on the tail of the Stegosaurus. Now, that brings us then to the plates on the back here. So, remember that in ecology we do talk about how organisms are adapted for their environment, how they are able to survive in their environment. And obviously the plates had to serve a purpose. Now at some point it was believed that, well, dinosaurs were very stupid, and they were thinking, and people were thinking about, okay, well, Stegosaurus over here had a small brain, and it did have a small brain relative to its massive size, but it doesn't mean it was stupid. That's not a good measure of intelligence, brain size. There are some cases, yes, but in this case, not really. But they thought, well, the brain size here was small, it was very stupid little animal, and at that time the theory wasn't that dinosaurs are related to birds, and so they basically were seen as an evolutionary dead end. And it was then theorized that, well, maybe animals like Stegosaurus and Triceratops and all these things, we've got a Triceratops walking on the other side there somewhere, but maybe they grew all these horns and plates and things without reason, and they were spending so much energy on growing them that they went extinct as a result. Now, of course, we know now that that wasn't the case. They actually had a purpose, and the purpose was, well, we don't know. We're not sure exactly what these plates were used for. Now, there are a few theories. One is that it could have been used to actually differentiate between species of Stegosaurids, so not Stegosaurus only, but things like Kentrosaurus and Huangosaurus and Gigantspinosaurus. So a whole bunch of different Stegosaurids all had plates. Most of them had spines, but Stegosaurus actually was the only one that had big leaf-like plates like this one. They were actually the weird one in the family, even though it is probably the most famous one of the Stegosaurids. At least in the Western culture, it's the most well-known one. But it could also have been a way of thermoregulating, where if it were feeling too hot, it could actually increase blood flow to these plates. And you'll see that if you look at Walking with Dinosaurs, the documentary series by the BBC from the 1990s. If you look at that, that's the theory that they propose, where they actually pump blood, they flush their plates as a way of intimidating other individuals of Stegosaurus or predators, but also possibly to lose heat. So it could have been courtship, it could have been temperature control, but just because it was used as temperature control doesn't mean that it couldn't have been used in courtship displays or threat displays as well. Okay, so things can have secondary functions. There is one theory that is pretty much not believed, and that is, if we actually move the plates here, we can, in the game at least, move the plates into different positions. And Stegosaurus probably wouldn't have been able to do that. That is just a fanciful depiction, but we can use it to do more damage or take reduced damage and things like that. But there is a theory, or was a theory, in the 1920s. So this was a long time ago. It's more than 100 years ago, and pretty much been discredited, never really taken seriously. It was theorized that maybe, just maybe, the plates were held like this and was actually used to glide off rocks. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm pretty sure that an animal that weighed 1.5 tons wouldn't have been held in the air by little plates like this. So really, really, really unlikely that that was their use. It was most likely for courtship or intimidation or body temperature control. But really cool creature. One thing I do need to also mention is that it was theorized that Stegosaurus had a second brain because the marsh, and remember, this is the same marsh that I've mentioned before regarding the Bone Wars and will mention again and again and again as we talk about creatures that he described. But when Marsh described the Stegosaurus, he looked at this tiny little brain case, or tiny little brain inside the poor little Stegosaurus, as he just stares vacantly into the middle distance. Yeah. Doesn't look like there's a lot going on behind those eyes. Yum, 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 yum. Food, that's all he's thinking about. Anyway, but he theorized that it's got such a small brain that surely the use of the tail here should have included a second brain. And if you look at the base of the tail there is an opening there, most likely a gland, but there is this biggish gland opening cavity. And they theorized that Stegosaurus has a second brain over there. That is not the case. It is a myth that Stegosaurus had a second brain, and it seems to be popping up every now and again that these guys were so stupid in the first brain that they had to have a second brain. That was not the case. That is well, I would say a pretty preposterous idea, but then again, octopus, for example, have got a decentralized nervous system where their brain kind of extends into each of their legs. So it's not that preposterous, but it definitely was not the case. But yeah, this is Stegosaurus, and of course we can use him to gather a bunch of stuff, not as well as any of the other things like the parasaurs or Parasaurolophus and Iguanodon that we'll talk about next time. But quite a cool dinosaur, an interesting little thing, and I probably won't be using him a lot because he is so slow, but still, I mean, being able to ride on the back of a Stegosaurus is something I very much want to be able to do in real life, and I'm sad that I will never have the chance to actually do that. So just a reminder, of course, that tomorrow I will be streaming again, and we'll be back in Subnautica, where we are going to carry on over there and try to survive. Of course, that will be tomorrow then, South African time, 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock, a 4-hour stream, and afterwards the stream will be made available on YouTube as well, in little 1-hour sections over the course of the coming week. So the times for that will be down in the description below. Feel free to join me, chat with me, find out more about what I do and, you know, the world around us and the world on planet 4546b in the planet of Subnautica. So until next time then, thank you all for joining me on our little adventure over here. I hope you learned something new about this weird creature, the Stegosaurus. Until next time then, stay safe. I will see you all soon.